So you want to start learning saxophone, but you haven't quite got the budget for a super expensive pro instrument. What do? Do you buy yourself a new Chinese instrument off Amazon, or do you go to eBay and get yourself a used saxophone? Well, to test it out, I went out this week and I bought this. This is the cheapest used Yamaha Alto that I could find, and I'm going to put it through the test in today's video to see how it compares to something that's worth 10 times as much, and to find out whether this is a good enough saxophone to cheaply get started on. Stick around, it's going to be a lot of fun actually. This is quite an interesting test. Now, as always, if you're new here, don't forget to click that subscribe button, hit the bell notification too so you find out about new videos. I'm putting them out all the time and I wouldn't want you to miss any of them. Right, let's dig in. G'day, it's Nigel here from Sax School. Hey, thanks for joining me for another one of these videos. Now, I love helping people start to learn saxophone, and it's something I do all the time in Sax School. We've got thousands of learners in there, and you know, of all those students, yeah, lots of them have got lovely pro shiny saxophones, but there's also hundreds and hundreds of players that start just like I did on a cheap student model saxophone. There's nothing wrong with that. I played my student model Buscher Aristocrat right up until I started doing gigs and making money as a pro player actually. And that's when I changed to this saxophone, so there's nothing wrong with that. The most important thing though when you're starting out is to find a saxophone that doesn't hold you back, that's going to allow you to learn quickly and is going to make learning easy. So that's why the decision about which saxophone you use is super important. Now, to help you out, I've actually put a PDF together with my top tips on buying a used saxophone, and that'll really help you to get started. You can use the link up here to go and grab that, and hopefully it'll help you with the selection process in your saxophone. So in today's video, I'm going to look at this saxophone, which costs roughly a tenth of what a pro saxophone like this would cost. But I'm going to look at why you should buy a used saxophone. I'm also going to tell you what this saxophone is and explain to you why I chose this one. Then I'm going to put it to the test and I'm going to play it through a couple of different pieces and compare it with my Pro Alto. And I'm also going to share a couple of pitfalls of what you need to be careful of when you do buy a used saxophone. Sound good? So let's start by talking about why you would choose a used saxophone instead of a shiny new Chinese saxophone. Because I get it, you go online these days in the student price range and there's just loads of options that are relatively inexpensive. In fact, new saxophones these days are cheaper than they were when I bought my first saxophone, or my parents bought me my first saxophone 40 years ago. They're actually cheaper now. The fact is, all student model saxophones, new ones, are made in China, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that there are so many different brands these days, it's difficult to find which ones are actually good. So the main benefit to me of buying a used saxophone is that you can get something that actually would have cost a whole lot more new and is arguably better quality, but it's similarly priced when it's used. So yes, it's not as shiny, but you're actually getting more saxophone for your money. As an example, this student model saxophone, I'll tell you about in a second, new would have cost 3 or 4 times more than the price that I paid for it, which is the equivalent price of a entry-level Chinese saxophone. So really, you're getting a lot more saxophone for your money, and what that translates to you as a player is better quality materials, better design, and better durability. The other important thing about buying a used saxophone like this is actually what you pay for is probably what you're going to get for it when you're ready to sell it on, if you do decide to do that. As opposed to buying a new Chinese saxophone, it's going to be worth half or a third of what you paid for it when you do go around to sell it. And you probably will outgrow your saxophone, because as you develop as a player, what you're looking for in terms of sound and feel, functionality is going to change, and you're probably going to find yourself in a year or two ready to upgrade to a higher, more pro level instrument. Now, the other thing I want to say about buying a used saxophone is probably the thing that holds most people back, is that just about any issue on a saxophone can be fixed relatively inexpensively by a good repairer. So most people will be thinking, I don't want to buy a used saxophone because what if it goes wrong? How do I fix it? It's going to cost me a load of cash. But the reality is, if you've got a good repairer near you, and most music shops will be able to connect you with a repairer, or these days you can go online and find who are the good repairers in your local area, most good repairers would be able to fix just about any issue. Unless the saxophone's been run over by a bus, you'll be able to fix most common problems. Because actually, saxophones look complicated, but they're actually quite simple. And someone who knows what they're doing can fix things pretty quickly and inexpensively. So when you add all those things together, actually considering your used saxophone isn't a bad idea. Yes, it's not as shiny, but you're getting a lot more for your money. It's going to be a lot more durable. It's going to last longer, have better resale value. And actually, if something does go wrong, you can get it fixed. So what is this saxophone? Well, I found a student model YAS-23 Yamaha saxophone. Now, I love these alto saxophones, and if you ever learned saxophone in school like I did, like back in the day, my first music lessons were actually as part of the peripatetic music program in my primary school in Australia. And I was really lucky that my parents scraped together enough money to buy me a saxophone, but the school had a whole bunch of saxophones that they would loan to students. And this is exactly the sort of saxophone that you would have got as a learner from school. So it's a bit of a nostalgia for me. These YAS-23s were made from like the late 70s, I think, for a number of years. I think they've replaced them now with the, it's not called the YAS-23, is it the YAS-280 or something? But they are built so well. In fact, I was talking to my friend and master saxophone repairer Steve Crow about these saxophones, and he was saying that the metal used in the keywork on this model saxophone is so sturdy, it actually makes it quite difficult to work on, but it means it's super durable. And in fact, he plays on one of these as a pro player. So in short, these things are built like tanks, which is great for students because they're going to get abused. I've no idea how old this saxophone is. I've got no idea whatsoever, but it's been around the block. It's quite scratched up, but there's no dings on it. And when I saw the listing on eBay, that was what I was looking for. I was making sure that there weren't any dings or obvious big issues with the saxophone. But apart from that, it's missing its little lyre screw here. A few scratches on it, but I have to say, I pulled it out of the box and it played perfectly. Let me show you the box. Okay, so when you're buying an old used saxophone, it's not going to be perfect. And look at this ratty old case that it comes in. It's got a hole in here. It's got some markings on the back where some student has colored it in with a pen. Yeah, it's a bit crappy, but inside it came with half a dozen unplayed reeds, a neck strap, and it even came with a Yamaha 4C mouthpiece, which is perfect for beginners. Although personally I would want to give this a good old clean and disinfect before I stuck it in my mouth. Now I want to talk about the pitfalls of buying a used saxophone and some things you should look out for. Plus I'm going to play test these in a second. But first, just tell me in a comment, would you consider buying a used saxophone? Or have you? Let me know in a comment, I'd love to know. So let's find out how this Yamaha 23 plays. Now on eBay, I paid £370 for this, which is about $480 US. So it's not the, you can get a cheaper Chinese saxophone, but most of the student model Chinese saxophones will start from around about that price, notwithstanding the absolute bargain basement ones on Amazon. So in fact, if you went to a music shop, you'd pay a lot more than that even for a Chinese saxophone. So it's pretty cheap, and this was the cheapest 23 that I could find on eBay. Now as a comparison, this is my Pro Yamaha 62 alto. The newer model Pro Yamaha altos would cost roughly 10 times what this cost. So that'd be like the 875 or the 82 Custom Z. But you're going to get a similar sort of sound to what my 62 is. So 10 times the difference. You'd be paying £3,700 or $4,800 US. 10 times more than this. Is there 10 times difference in the sound and the way it plays? Well, you'll hear it in just a second. But first of all, when I got this out of the box, straight away, it just played amazingly. Now I'm using my Theowane Gaia size 8 hard rubber mouthpiece with a Leger Signature 2.5 reed. It's my standard mouthpiece I use, but it plays great. Now, not only did every note seal from the bottom all the way up, but it's in tune, and the altissimo works great. It's amazing, really. Even the overtones work well. Yeah, it's quite surprising actually, and even a little bit scary. So let's hear how they sound. Now I'm going to play through a couple different pieces. I'm going to play them on the 23 and on my 62 alto using my Theo 1A mouthpiece. Have a listen and let me know in a comment what you think. Do they sound different? Which do you prefer the sound of? So what do you think about that? It's pretty interesting when you put them side by side. Now I recorded both of them using the same microphones, an AKG 414. So could you hear a big difference in there? From my point of view, I thought that the 23 played amazingly. It's in tune, the mechanism, yeah, it's not quite as ergonomically perfect as my 62, but it feels really good under your fingers. There's nothing that feels awkward. Even I've played a lot of Chinese student model instruments that didn't feel quite as comfortable or as secure as this older saxophone. Now there's a little bit more resistance when I blow through this saxophone compared to this saxophone. That doesn't make a big difference. It's just a little bit more back pressure. And if you're a beginner player, you wouldn't even notice that difference. The final thing that I notice as a player in my room here is I can hear a slight more roundness to the sound of my 62 compared to the 23. But if you were in a live situation playing on stage, I bet you as an audience wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Now, which saxophone would I prefer to play? Well, it's the 62 because there's all those little fine details make it a little bit more exciting to me. But if I were absolute beginner player, you know what? I wouldn't know the difference between this and this. I would be just as good off with this 23 and it wouldn't hold me back in any way whatsoever. It's stonking value for money. It really blows my mind actually. So just to wrap up, let's talk about some pitfalls that you need to avoid if you are looking at buying a used saxophone on eBay. Now don't forget we've got a PDF that you can download that'll give you some pointers on which saxophones to look for. And these are our best suggestions for used saxophones, brands and models, and also some pointers on how to find that right saxophone and what things to avoid. But really quickly, the main things that you're looking for are obvious signs of damage. Now you need to expect the used saxophone is going to have some wear and tear, particularly if you're paying a little bit less money for it. Wear and tear, to my mind, is fine, and to be honest with you, a lot of people like the look of a used saxophone. But you're looking for obvious signs of dents or major repairs that have been done. Now on this saxophone, if you look across it, there's really, the only point is just here. If you have a look here, you can see there's some discoloration around this key, and that's where there's been a repair done at some point. That's not a big problem, but if you saw lots of those, I'd be concerned. But most importantly is looking for models that you know are proven great saxophones. Of course, if you're shopping on eBay, I'd also look for a seller that's got some good feedback and has done a few different transactions. You don't want to be looking for that eBay seller who's never sold anything on eBay before or is asking for a strange payment method. You want to be looking for somebody who's got loads of feedback, sold loads of things before, and is happy to just take PayPal. So there you go. Hopefully that'll help you with the choosing process, and you'll consider looking at a used saxophone. Of course, one other thing you can do is go to your music shop who has got some used saxophones in stock and start your journey there, because then you've also got the follow-up of the music shop should something go wrong. But don't forget to let me know in a comment if you would consider using a used saxophone or buying one, or if you've already bought one. And if you want to get some extra tips, grab our PDF so that you can find out which models we suggest, which brands, and the main things to avoid. And of course, if you're ready to really get started with your saxophone and make some good progress and join our community of learners, then come and check out what we're doing at Sax School. Right now we've got a 14-day trial. That means you can get free access to the entire library of lessons and courses. You can see what it's all about and see if it suits you, make some progress, plus also get some help from myself and my team of tutors so we can get you off to the right start and moving in the right direction with your playing. And, you know, if you stick around, you can become one of our family of Sax School members who are all making great progress and having a load of fun with it. So, keep practicing hard. I'll catch you next time.